right, welcome. This is your Gaza War Sit Rep Day 154. 154. No end in sight. March 8th, International Women's Day, 2024. And there are two things I want to talk about today. So this will probably be another brief one. One is I have many questions about this pier, this US pier that's been announced, that the US is going to put a pier in Gaza City and deliver aid from the pier. And that raises so many questions that I just want to ask. I just want to throw out. I have no idea what's going on with this pier. There are a lot of things that don't make sense to me. But the other thing is Abu Obeida, the spokesperson for the Qassam brigades, Hamas's armed wing, gave a speech today. So I want to go through that. Those are the two main things that I wanted to talk about. Besides that, though, we should have a report from the front, and we'll start with Iraq again. From the fronts, we'll start with Iraq again. The Islamic resistance in Iraq targeted the intelligence base north of the occupied Golan Heights with a kamikaze drone, targeted the oil refineries in Haifa with a drone. So that's 2 attacks in a day. For the past 3-4 days, they've been doing about an attack a day. And today there has been 2. So they are definitively back in the fight and striking targets in Israel. So I'm sure that there's very likely to simply it's very likely that we'll be seeing more of those in the coming days of the war. Hezbollah, artillery shells all over settlements, targeting an assembly of Israeli soldiers with rockets, the Falak 1 rockets. So active on that front. In Gaza, there have been fighting in Beit Hanun. I don't know if you remember from many sit reps ago when I showed you a map, but Beit Hanun is virtually just inside of the Gaza fence. So these are areas where this is where Israel first came in, and they are continuing to be fighting in Beit Hanun in North Gaza. There's also major fighting in Gaza, in Khan Yunis, an ambush against an infantry force, clashes in Khan Yunis, targeting a military vehicle in Khan Yunis. And then there are Jabalia, there's fighting in Jabalia, hitting positions in Israelis in Jabalia, and the West Bank. And that the fact that there's fighting in the West Bank is a good lead in to the speech by Abu Obeida. So Abu Obeida, who I'm sure you have seen, he's the one who wears the kufiya as a mask. We've never seen his face, unlike Hassan Nasrallah, who is able to speak with his face exposed. Abu Obeida, nobody knows his face. And Abu Obeida's speech had some interesting features. So he made some points that I think are really important, just general points. One of them is the laws of the world are helpless against Israel. If there was justice in the world, Israel would have been in court, but instead the law exists to protect injustice and aggression. So that's one of his main points. Another point that he made, which I think is important, is he said all of the things that Israel has been doing, this aggression, and they continuously use the term Nazi to describe the Israelis now. And he says everything that these Nazis have done has been planned in advance. What they're doing in Gaza, their plan to demolish Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, All of these things, they're what they're doing in the West Bank, all of these things were planned in advance of October 7th. So this is the idea that Hamas has been putting forward, that October 7th was a preemption of an attack by Israel, which actually makes a lot of sense if you consider the narratives that Israel had ready to fabricate from nothing about what Hamas did, the actions that they've taken to seal, to create starvation, to bomb and and the battle plan that they've executed. All of these things are things that they clearly have wanted to do for a long time. And that's also why I constantly come back to the idea that Hamas or Palestinians did not bring this on themselves. And I think that idea has to keep being repeated, that this is Israel's responsibility. Israel is doing this. Israel has always wanted to do this. It is in Israel's nature to do this. This is not something that Israel was provoked into doing by October 7th or other resistance activities. So then Abu Obeida goes on, he says, and this image, an unjust and trembling hand rises in the Security Council to obstruct even formal attempts to support the oppressed. He calls for a mass mobilization in the West Bank and Jerusalem of Palestinians during Ramadan. So we'll see how that goes, but I think the idea is that this is not going to be a calm and peaceful Ramadan, the holy month of Muslim people. Our fighters, he also talks about how he talks about all the battle, like the Battle of Zaytun, which he doesn't specifically talk about Zaytun. He says we've carried out a number of what he calls qualitative operations over the past 3 weeks, which is roughly the time frame of the Battle of Zaytun, what we've been calling the Battle of Zaytun, attacking, infiltrating forces in the south and the north. And then he also says another thing that we've been saying on these sit reps, which is that the ceasefire negotiations are nothing but a sham, and that Hamas is not going to negotiate starvation. They are not going to negotiate return of the prisoners in exchange for some break in bombing that then resumes. They will not be compromising on the cessation of aggression, the withdrawal of the enemy, and reconstruction. He mentions that the famine extends to the prisoners. So the Israelis are also, by starving the Palestinians, the Israelis are also starving their own captives in Gaza to death, which again seems to be something that they're willing to accept, which is strange, but it does seem to be the case. You all have probably seen the meme where they kind of lampooned the fact that they're airdropping aid at the same time as they're airdropping Israel's dropping bombs. Well, apparently it did happen simultaneously today. So there were also aid packets where the parachutes didn't open, and they actually fell on people and killed them in Gaza. So it's the revolting nature of the airdrops continues to be affirmed here. Okay, so since we clarified that the airdrops are not working, I suppose we can talk about the idea that the Americans are going to establish an offshore naval presence just offshore of the Gaza Strip, and um, and to deliver aid. Oh, sorry. Speaking of the American Navy, I should probably mention that the Houthis, Ansar Allah, has also hit an American naval ship. I believe it was yesterday. So that's another another part of the naval story. But this part of the naval story that we're talking about is the idea that the Americans are going to set up a pier. They're going to set up a naval. They're going to station their navy in such a way as to deliver aid to Gaza via a port. So, what is going on here? Because this is being discussed as if the Americans don't know that Gaza already has an occupier, and that occupier is Israel, and Israel is the entity that controls Gaza's ports, and Israel is the entity that imposes a naval blockade on Gaza. Now, if the Americans are going to, Israel has a number of principles that it follows with respect to Gaza. One is that it controls anything that goes in and out. And two is that it does not give anything to Gaza. It takes from Gaza. So all the humanitarian aid that is going into Gaza comes from the United Nations or donor countries, Qatar or other donors. It's not coming from Israel. Israel does not provide aid to Gaza. Israel is trying to starve Gaza. Why would they provide aid? But they also insist on controlling everything that goes into Gaza. So Israel, which is the absurdity that the international community has accepted, that we've all accepted the idea that the people in Gaza are to be controlled by this entity that is full of racial hatred towards them and is trying to kill them and starve them, including the children, as rabbis have apparently affirmed today, even as late as today. So if Israel is going to control everything that goes in and out, why would they let the Americans establish a naval pier to distribute humanitarian aid? Why they would allow airdrops? I mean, airdrops is the airdrops have been such a horrific and insulting thing that you can see why Israel would allow it. A pier is a little different, and so I suppose the Americans and the Israelis will cooperate. The Israelis have said they're okay with working with the Americans on this. So the Israelis will inspect everything and make sure that everything is kosher and that everything goes through, that meets their standards for continuing the starvation of the people of Gaza. But then why would the Americans do it in the first place? And then the other thing is, okay, so suppose there's some sinister notion. So I've heard of several sinister ideas. One sinister idea is they want to establish a naval base in Gaza, but again, a naval base in Gaza, like Israel is already occupying Gaza. They have naval ports galore on the Israeli side. What do the Americans need a naval base in Gaza for? So many countries in the region host American bases already. So I don't know. As a sinister plan, that one doesn't make a lot of sense. What about the idea that because Egypt has so far been rejectionist of the idea of allowing all the Palestinians to be ethnically cleansed and go into Egyptian territory? Egypt has so far said no to that. Maybe the Americans are setting up a naval base to accept the Palestinians when Israel tries to push them into the sea. But that doesn't seem like very American, taking a bunch of refugees, and where are they going to take them to the Central African Republic or something? Where are they going to take them? They're going to load them onto naval ships, cargo ships, and then ship them somewhere, hundreds of thousands of people. I don't know. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound feasible. We've seen weird things over the past 5 months. We've seen things we've never seen before. We've seen things we never could have imagined. So maybe maybe these are some of the ideas, but it just doesn't seem workable. The one sinister thought that I had, and if you're a member of my Substack, and you've read one of my articles about this going back, one of the first articles I wrote when the genocide started was October 21st, called "The Combined West Opts for Genocide," here on Substack. It shows a bunch of maps and things, and then at the end I have this photo because I was thinking of I thought of an analogy of that time a few years ago when the Iranians sent a tanker to Venezuela, despite the Americans saying no, Venezuela is under a blockade and you're not allowed to go, and the Iranians basically ran that blockade. And I said that this is probably, I don't know when, maybe it'll be years, maybe it'll be months, maybe it'll be at the end of this war, but at the end of this war the siege will likely be broken by probably an Iranian ship sailing into the Gaza port. Now, maybe if an engineered starvation provides a pretext for an American naval presence, an extensive naval presence under the pretext of distributing aid, trickling aid to starving people that they themselves are starving and bombing. Well, maybe that would overcomplicate Iran or China or one of these BRICS countries actually putting together a fleet or a flotilla to run this blockade and sail into Gaza. And so maybe that's so now sailing into Gaza, if the US Navy is there, sailing for Iran to sail into Gaza becomes a little bit more complicated. It's something you can't do without going to war with the United States, which is probably of the possible explanations for why America would do this, why Israel would allow this, strikes me as the most believable. I do think that the price of that is pretty high. The only reason they could pay that price is because maybe they got wind of such plans. Maybe there is such plans that that are unfolding in Iran or China or somewhere else, and the United States wants to get there ahead of this plan. But for the United States to take over aid provision, even being inspected by, even being approved by Israel, is a very new situation. It's a new situation because that means that all these months, all these years, the Israelis have been bombing and assassinating United Nations personnel who have been provisioning aid. Are they going to do that to the Americans? I mean, there's some history. They killed U.S. sailors on the USS Liberty, but that was 1967. That was a lot of decades ago. Are they going to start killing Americans who were American naval personnel who are distributing aid off of this pier if they don't like what they see? Well, are they going? is the American Israeli cooperation on providing humanitarian aid, even at starvation levels, is that going to be smooth when the Israelis want to starve them and the Americans want what, to keep them above the level of starvation for the cameras or something? Are American personnel gonna collaborate seamlessly with the genocidal Israeli personnel? Like, yeah, it's one thing at the elite level. Like, obviously, the American elites are completely genocidal, but our ordinary personnel who have not gone through the Israeli education system and who have not been taught since childhood to that, you know, all of these tenets of hatred and racism that Israelis are taught. Are they just gonna assimilate into that worldview just because they're there? So I don't know. This doesn't this seems like all a very strange plan that does not make any sense to me. Um, and maybe we'll know more in the coming days. So those are my questions. I know that there are very what's the word? Not naive people who are listening, who watch these videos. People who are watching these videos and leaving comments are not easily fooled. I've been reading and reacting to your comments, and I'm very impressed. I don't think that collectively this is a group of people that lets a lot get by them. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think of this pier? What is this? What is this pier? What is happening with this? Um, is it sinister notion number one, where they're um, where they're trying to establish a naval presence? Is it sinister notion number two, where they're trying to uh, find a way to ethnically cleanse Palestinians via the sea route? Is it sinister option number three, where they're trying to preempt a possible massive naval aid operation from Iran or some other BRICS actor? Or is it some door number four that I haven't even thought of? Um, Let me know what you think, and like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next